Sorry. I don't have the correct address popped up here for the soundtrack today, so I will write it on a piece of paper and give it to you at the end, where you can get the soundtrack for today. But this is where you go to make comments or ask a question. Scientificsounds.com/ask a question. And here we go with, this is where you can go to my YouTube channel to look at the whole list of all of these live streams that I have done since the beginning, over a year, working our way up to 70. It's sort of kind of unbelievable to me. It's been going this long, but here we are again. I mean, after a year and a half, we're into another surge. So right now, this is life for us, as we can keep going. Thank you, Shay. Here is the address that Shay just gave me, where you can get the soundtrack for today. scientificsounds.com/q-mind. I should probably warn everyone that today will be another day of exploration of the uncanny and strange and weird, because the nature of reality tends to be that way. So, fair warning, be prepared for anything. You never know what's going to happen. That's me and my news feeds. Never know what's going to come next. So let's get right to it. When the most ancient text on Earth is the Chinese text of the I Ching. That's this book, this guy right here, which I spent one whole live stream talking about the I Ching and the 64 hexagrams and the just sort of mind-blowing mathematics behind the I Ching, that all based on the yin-yang, the light-dark, in-out, positive, negative, up-down, male-female, the great duality that forms all things. And as a matter of fact, that's the kind of the sort of the basis of computer code, on-off. A gate that goes on and off makes ones and zeros. Ones and zeros is the language of computers. And as it turns out, we'll see, as mentioned in this most ancient text on the planet, 5,000-year-old text, alludes to the fact that this is the foundation nature of the universe itself, is the binary code of the quantum mind, the Q mind. I'm labeling it that, Q mind. Now, even though the letter Q seems to have been commandeered by strange elements of our society, the anonymous Q, the conspiracy Q, I'm talking about the grand, multi-dimensional, universal Q mind. And perhaps it is anything but anonymous, because it's personal. It's right inside of the heart of you and me and everybody else, and our common core. And the combination of the language of the zero and the one, of the binary code of the universe, the computer code of the universe in the quantum mind, has the ability to, just like the image on this computer screen, looks real, but the closer you look, the more you realize it's made of extremely small pixels in this case, the three primary colors of pixels. They're all so small that your mind is fooled. These look like trees, this looks like the real thing. Reality itself is multi-dimensional, virtual reality movie that we're in that's being generated moment by moment. Just like if this right here was a movie, we'd have a certain number of frames per second. On a computer screen, it's refreshes of the screen per second. Like it's happening right now. The screen is starting at the top with a line across of pixels that quickly make the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth line. They scan all the way down to the bottom, start at the top and scan again, and it does it 60 times per second. So it's faster than our eye can catch it. So we're fooled. And when we're talking about the universal intelligence of all things, creating a hyperdimensional, pixelated movie that we're all in, and the size of these pixels is quanta, the Planck length, the smallest that you could possibly imagine. And the refresh rate is infinitely fast. There's no way to see through this movie. The only way to see through this movie is in your consciousness itself, where this movie is arising from. And that is in the present moment. Once we're outside of time, refresh rates are constant. In the present moment, we're in between one frame and the next, and all of a sudden we can see through the movie. Like the Matrix, where the green kind of cascading elements coming down in the movie of the Matrix forms the computer code that's fooling everybody into thinking they're in this world. In reality, they're, in some pod with tubes going in. That's not what I think is going on here. I think this is, according to the most ancient texts on the planet, the I Ching and the Vedas and the Sutras of Patanjali and all the rest, that this is the nature of cosmic mind, the nature of the quantum field, of the grand quantum mind of all things. Sutras of Patanjali. I have many copies of this. This one I got because I figured the allegory of a collector's edition of the Sutras of Patanjali makes a lot of sense if you're a student of the quantum mind, of Q mind. And the books that have had the most powerful influence on me is this guy and this guy, which I devoted in an entire episode to the 10 steps, sort of in the back of this book, called The 10 Bulls, with the cool little illustrations and verses, The 10 Steps to Enlightenment. And this book, Sutras of Patanjali and the Vedas and these ancient texts from India and the ancient texts from China, the two oldest cultures on the planet. And the Zen practices that really form a basis for every minute Zen, which I've talked about a number of times. The most sacred thing you can do is take another breath, wash a cup, chop wood, carry water, that kind of thing. So as we sort of dig down into this idea of the cosmic yin-yang that's repeated infinitely within itself, the yin-yangs within yin-yangs within yin-yang, systems within systems within systems, holographic fractal reflections everywhere, boundless into the core of the quantum field and boundless outward into the whole, into the biggest, most gigantic structures in the universe that we can identify. The cosmic filaments and, the cosmic web that looks almost exactly like the connectome in the brain, the connections between neurons with axon webs, same kind of business. But this idea that we have multiples within multiples within multiples lends itself to a mathematical explanation of the multiverse, the multi-universe, where there's an infinite number of universes that are all networked together. Of course, I wouldn't expect them to be all nice and lined up like this. They would be in massive, gigantic fractal patterns that go forever within themselves. And our universe is just one of those. And perhaps if our universe bumped into another one, they would both explode, and that would be the beginning of our Big Bang. And if you believe in the Big Bang, we've discussed that also. What if the universe didn't have a Big Bang? But here we are with the pixelized nature of the yin-yang itself, that it's zeros and ones. It's binary code spelling out a computer program that creates all things based on the mathematics that spin from that. The hologram of quantum pixels moving at the speed of light. Informations of zeros and ones, making things, making everything, including the zeros and ones are made of zeros and ones. It's infinite, and it never had a beginning and never has an end. It's information networks throughout the universe. As I said before, in Terence Witt's book, The Null Universe, where it's simple zero on one side with an equal sign and complex zero on the other side. And this is infinitely complex zero. And the only difference between the two is infinitely complex zero on this side of the equation is all the mathematical relationships of zero to itself. Plus, minus, square roots of, divided, multiplied, arrays, cosines, all of it. Everything that you could ever imagine in math is the relationships of zero to itself. And those relationships is what pops out of nothing. Something pops out of nothing, and the something is the math. And the whole universe is based on math. And we see that all around us. Math is the core information nexus of the creation of the universe, based on zeros and ones, and how it creates the pixel depth of what we see and what we experience. The cosmic mind, the lattice pattern of communication networks between neurons, and the galactic web, the universal filaments that form everything in the universe, where these tendrils are, millions of light years long, filled with countless star fields and nebula and galaxies. Each of these lines is galaxies. It's so stupendously gigantic that the mind boggles, can't wrap your mind around it. And this whole giant, universally wide network would be a small piece in our own little local universe that is jostling around in a network that looks just like this of universes. And so all of these would be universes instead of galaxies. Once again, you would see the fractal holographic nature, that the grand filaments that fill the multiverse are reflected in each of the universes in the same kind of filament structure, and reflected in miniature in our own brains, the brain network, because it's the Q-mind, the quantum mind that extends into all these regions. Sort of like Lord of the Rings, one ring to bring them all in and bind them. One mind to bring them all and bind them. The idea of this that's inside your own skull, being the microcosm receptor and broadcaster that links to the whole system. And anything that happens in here reflects itself to the farthest reaches of the multiverse, and vice versa. And the network connections in my own brain can form network connections with your brain and all of our brains. Like, that's what we're doing here. This idea that we can create a new connectome of my brain as a neuron and your brains as neurons, and we're growing connections between these neurons, and we're making those connections denser and denser and denser every time we come together like this and put headphones on and listen to a soundtrack that binds all of our minds together into a single brainwave state through entrainment. And not just entrainment, but each one of us is synchronizing up all these networks within our own brains with binaural beats that form synchronicity. That's where the new answers come through. So we're orchestrating a brain state where eurekas happen, where new original ideas drop in. And we're centering everybody's brainwaves locked together into exactly the same brain state, using a scientific method, the use of sound and binaural beats to do that, in order to link our minds into the general monster gigantic Q mind and influence the function of the whole network, change reality as we know it, penetrate to the core of the Q. Do you remember I spent a whole episode on the power of numbers, the alphabetology, the system I came up with of analyzing which letters you have in your name and how that molds who you are, because letters are just representations of a shaped packet of sound that I shoot out of my mouth. So I'm vibrating vocal cords and shaping my mouth and my tongue and my teeth and shaping that into a letter like L or R or S or T or M. I'm shaping the packet and shooting it out into the universe. So when I say something like my name, Jeffrey, it's Jeffrey forms this packet, a signature packet of information that shoots out, has power. That packet of information impacts your body and distorts the cells and tips the water. You know, the water in our bodies, 70% water, is not just old water, it's a colloidal fluid. It's a special form of water, biological water. A colloidal fluid is water that's sort of salty, so that's why I made the analogy of the fact that we've got the ocean inside of us and we're in a spacesuit so we can walk on land, ocean beings walking on land. But the salty characteristic of intercellular, extracellular fluids, all the fluids in my body, or a colloidal fluid, it's thicker than water, it's different, it's biological. And what makes it special, the atomic characteristics of the molecule of water, 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, hydrogen being the most primordial element on the periodic table, the very first thing to ever show up in the universe, right? Hydrogen, helium, lithium. But hydrogen was number 1, the most abundant atom in the universe, the most primordial and ancient atom that there is. It makes up 70% of what I am. H2O. And because oxygen and hydrogen have opposite charges, we formed this tetrahedron, which is a sacred structure, one of the 5 platonic solids that form all things, that form the basic structure of the geometry of the universe and everything in it, the 5 platonic solids, dodecahedron and hexahedron and tetrahedron, you know, those guys. And that means that when the sound waves hit my body and distort the cells, it's distorting the lattice structure of of the water and pushing it over the edge from a colloidal fluid into a liquid crystal. That's the beauty of how the body has arranged water. Water has been pushed into a special state, this colloidal state of water, where it's balancing right on the razor's edge of water or liquid crystal. And all that requires for it to flip over from one to the other is a pressure wave of sound. I'll strip the sound word away, and it's pure energy moving through a medium. And when that pure energy is moving through a medium at a certain range of frequencies, between 20 and 20,000 hertz, we've got a mechanism to pick it up. If it's between 500 hertz down to 0.3 hertz, then this mechanism picks it up. But it's pure energy anyhow, whatever word you put on it. Pure energy moving through air molecules strikes my body, distorts the cell shape, and pushes the water over into a liquid crystal state, which now has piezoelectric effect. And the piezoelectric characteristics create a wavefront of electromagnetic energy in the exact shape and form of the sound waves that hit me. Sound waves convert to electromagnetic waves, and they retain all their characteristics of shape and dimension and power into my body as electromagnetic fields. And the electromagnetic fields bind and interact with all the electromagnetic fields in my body, and about everything in my body is electromagnetic. You know, the cerebrospinal fluid is an electrolyte, so yeah, it's influenced. The cardiovascular fluid, my blood, has got hemoglobin with iron in it, and iron is the only element of the periodic table with magnetic properties. So it's moving through my blood, and magnets moving create electrical fields. So the electrical field of the piezoelectric effect is intermingling with the electrical fields generated by my blood flowing. And then there's ions flowing down my nerves from my brain. Electricity and motion creates magnetic fields at right angles. So I have biomagnetic field, which is being influenced by the electrical field depolarizations of the piezoelectric effect, which is coming from the distortion of the cells from the sound waves of my voice in shaped packets translating into my body as direct information directly into your unconscious mind, no matter what the language is. Now, that is the science of vibration in Sanskrit. The whole concept of Sanskrit is that. The science of vibration is there's a certain minimum number of ways I can shape my mouth to create these packets, and that is the basic alphabet in Sanskrit. All the mathematical ways I can do that, represented by different letters. So that's supposedly the mother tongue of all tongues, with the whole set. Every culture on Earth that speaks a different language is pulling a little portion out of that mother tongue and making that their whole language to express the concept of what that culture is here to express. And that's where you see different cultures express different personalities. The French are different than the Germans, and the language is the same. The Japanese cannot pronounce L. They never learned how to touch the tip of their tongue up to the top of the palate. L. So the best they can do is R. You can see where R, the tongue comes up, but it doesn't quite touch the roof of my mouth, but L does. And if you never learned how to touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, then it's a very hard thing to learn how to do. Anyway, so the idea that the full set and the full language is Sanskrit, which brings us back, to this idea. The original language and the most ancient use of that language, the Sutras of Patanjali, which is a series of ancient verses in this conscious language of Sanskrit, describing what I am talking about right now with the Q field. That is exactly what these books are talking about. The universal mind, the creation of the universe as a thought, as not even a thought, as an idea that ripples time-space. At the core of the quantum field is nothing there. Energy, pattern, relationships in a state of vibration forming standing waves, like the sand dancing on the metal plate, forming patterns. Standing wave patterns look solid, but they're not. It's an illusion. And you stack them together mathematically, and the math that governs that is music theory. Harmonics, overtones fit together nicely, stack nicely. And the further you zoom back from that, the more it coalesces, stack upon stack upon stack, infinite numbers of stacks, harmonically, mathematically woven together into a massive tapestry of this universe. Me, things, you, all of it, a master illusion. Three-dimensional, hyperdimensional movie with the grain of pixels and the speed of the film at infinite speed. Can't see through it. The question is, where it all come from? Why? Why is it like this? This is the face of God. This is what it looks like. This is what godhood is. There was a great statement from Deepak Chopra once that said, our eyes and our ears and our noses and our mouths is how God sees and hears and touches things. And this is straight back from the Vedas, exactly what's said in the Sutras of Patanjali, that the universe experiences itself through us. We are created specifically for the universe to get more information about what it means to be God. So it's sort of like the infinite spirit, the infinite life organizing principle of the universe, the grand Q-mind, the grand consciousness of all consciousnesses that exists infinitely and eternally and has never started, will never stop, is constantly working to deepen its experience of what it means to be God. It's constantly expanding its understanding and its experience of this. And so therefore, as part of that, we are created with sensory organs in order to look out upon the creation that our deepest part has made, so it can experience from as many different possible standpoints and as many different sensations as it can possibly pack in. And that means that as it evolves further and further, we will have more and more senses that come online to experience more and more pie wedges of the dimensionality of what this is, so that God can get a deeper and deeper understanding and experience of what it means to be God. Part of that is interrelationships among us, relationships themselves, having a friend, having a lover, having a community of people that you interact with, an infinite number of stories from an infinite number of standpoints, moment by moment by moment, forever, expanding, deepening. As the godhood itself continually wakes up more and more and more and more forever through us, through our experience. The universe and God isn't someplace else. It's here, inside of me, inside of you. This experience we're having is what is God experiencing godhood. And now more and more of these, my news feeds are constantly tweaking my brain. The basis of the universe may not be energy or matter, but information. It's, it may be that when we look at, energy equals matter, the universe may not be the energy or the matter part. It may be this equal sign. What stands between those is where it's at. And what that means, the equal sign, is the math. It's energy equals matter. Well, the equal sign is the math, and the math is information. It's the zeros and ones, forming every mathematical computation you could think of, right? So in this, quote, radical view, the universe is a giant supercomputer processing particles as bits. Well, I mean, the giant supercomputer is the mind of God, you know. According to the Vedas and the ancient texts, it's not a supercomputer, it's the quantum computer at the heart of the whole universe. It's the ultimate Q mind, the quantum mind, quantum computer mind, crunching numbers, manufacturing what appears to be what we see and experience and touch and taste and smell, information, in motion, evolving, constantly getting bigger, crunching more and more and more numbers as it evolves the universe with infinite number of standpoints. New scientists, reality, a universe of information. What we call reality might actually be the output of a program running on a cosmos-sized quantum computer. Why they always have to make it a quantum computer that's made by somebody? You know, why they can't go back to the original texts, ancient texts on Earth. This cosmos-sized quantum computer is, you know, the evolving life principle of the Q mind, operating and expanding its understanding of what it means to be by continually adding new worlds and new dimensions and new types of creatures with new sense organs to experience itself from as many possible vibrational standpoints as at once. You know, is the entire universe is nothing more than thought created by God? Now we're getting somewhere. You know, now we're like really getting to the core of what the ancients have been saying all along. Here we are again, back to the beginning. Science discovers God. Science discovers the Vedas. Science discovers the ancient texts on Earth. Here we go. Is it possible that reality is not what it appears through the five senses? Challenging the understanding of reality, science has begun to accept what spiritualists have always believed on a deep level. Full circle. Full yin-yang, all the way back to the beginning. Yeah. Q-mind. In a continual, constant, expanding, information-packed universe, created to understand what godhood is. More understanding is more number crunching, more information, number crunching, more expanding of information. You know, my senses, my collecting information from my senses, from all different parts of the body, is information processed in a quantum computer. It's information. The equal sign. You know, what if our universe is, you know, no more than a computer algorithm? Well, Microsoft researchers think so. Well, that's nice. Is the universe an algorithm powered by a revolutionary self-learning system of physical laws? Self-learning system of the Q mind, of the quantum mind. The hyperdimensional, multidimensional Q mind of all. The self-organizing principle of life itself. Expanding its knowledge of selfness, of itself. They keep wanting it to be a computer, but I don't think it needs to be. It's an organic computer. Universal mind at the quantum field. Crunching numbers. Creating reality on the fly. Jazz, universal jazz. Ad-libbing as you go. Creating new rules of the universe. The rules that we run by right now could be amorphous. I mean, that's according to Rupert Sheldrake and the morphogenic field. You know, one of the key components of the morphogenic field is that the rules of the game that govern the universe are malleable. they can morph, they can grow, they can understand, they can, the universe can increase its understanding of how to make a universe and adjust the rules to do it better. Adjust the rules of what makes me a me, and add another half a dozen senses. So I get the Q mind gets a better perspective of what this, how can I experience this more deeply. Which brings us to this guy. This guy named Wolfram, Stephen Wolfram. I came across his information decades ago. This guy's no slouch. He's very smart. He produced the #1 top scientific program that all scientists in the world use, Mathematica. It's like the #1 program that exists in scientific computation. This is the guy who invented it. This is his book, Stephen Wolfram, A New Kind of Science. This book, which is a hefty thing, weighs a lot, takes on the structure of the universe. These diagrams in his book were generated by his mathematical program, by the way. Unique, mind-blowing, amazing stuff. This book is a treatise on his idea of what is the universe and what makes it run. A whole treatise and the mathematics involved about the engine of the universe and creation, how it works mathematically. Pretty absolutely mind-blowing stuff. So, yeah, if you want a dense read, buy that book. Oh my God. However, the central operating idea that he's got is, I'll just read this. In 2002, Stephen Wolfram published his 1,200-page mammoth book, A New Kind of Science, one I just showed you, where he applied his research on cellular automata to physics. The main thesis of the book is that simple programs, in particular the Rule 110 cellular automation, can generate very complex systems through repetitive application of a simple rule. It further claims that the systems can describe all of the physical world, and that the universe itself is computational, information. The book got controversial reviews. While some found that it contains a cornucopia of ideas, others criticized it as arrogant and overstated. Among the most famous critics were Ray Kurzweil, who we talked about before at length in one of my previous live streams, and Nobel laureate Steven Weinberg. So yeah, of course, he comes out with, okay, here's how the universe works. I've got the secret of the universe. And the secret is a simple mathematical formula that repeats back into itself, generates the world that we know. And actually, that's how fractal mathematics work. Fractal math, fractals are just a simple formula repeated and repeated on itself that generates all those amazing forms that you see in fractals, where the fractal shape is reflected in miniature, and inside of that it's again and again and again, and as you zoom into it, it all looks the same forever. That is all an automatic rolling forward of math from a simple single formula. So according to him, in the Q mind, at the center of all things, in the center of the Q mind is a simple formula that the Q mind just kicks that pebble down the hill, and as it rolls down, it gathers steam and generates within itself more and more, and just runs itself out and creates all forms that we know in the whole universe. rocks and mountains and clouds and, galactic nebula and your body and my mind, all of that created from this simple formula that's kicked down the hill that automatically rolls forward because of the nature of the mathematical formula itself. The kind of thing that Einstein dreamed about finding. The magic simple formula, that's the secret of the universe. This simple formula that once you kick it rolling, it starts to generate everything that we see on a moment-by-moment basis as it all unfolds. This idea of the binary code of the yin-yang, hidden within that simple formula is the automatic cranking out of all forms that we see in the universe as a formula, mathematical formula information. Which brings us back to what I've talked about before with the default mode network, right? These 4 zones in the brain, frontal, occipital, 2 parietal, temporal zones, in tight synchronicity to each other, that forms 95% of all brain function. You and me talking and our regular experience of cognitive consciousness is just 5% off the top. Down here, what the hell's going on? I've always said I believe it's the quantum reality generator. It's the Q mind, the local Q mind connected into the matrix, linked in with the grand Q mind of all Q minds in the multidimensional universe, creating everything. All of it linked up together in a giant web, in a neural net, in a pixelated version of the yin-yang, of the zeros and ones, generating all reality from a simple mathematical formula. Now, decades ago, I bought this program called, what is it called? Mojo World is what it was called. Mojo World. Look it up. M-O-J-O World. It was a computer program for generating reality, for generating planets. So you had some simple controls over here that you could set out. There was a couple of pages of controls. Each one of these buttons would pop up another page of controls, and you set all the parameters, and then when you push the button, the create button, it generated a whole world, a whole planet, and everything in it. This is based on Wolfram's mathematics. Simple formula creates fractal geometries, and the fractal nature of these geometries turns out to be how worlds are made. So once you set all these parameters, then you hit the button called create, which would start to render it. Sometimes it would take a half hour to render and create all the polygons and the pixels. But you would have worlds. Worlds would look absolutely real. They have shading, they have rocks, they have water, they have clouds, they have skies, they have stars, they have universes. You have snow peaks. It's mind-blowing. Just from a simple mathematical formula running itself out creates a world that looks absolutely real. I mean, and you could zoom back from that world and see the whole planet. You could make planets. You could stick them in the sky. It was, and you could zoom in. You zoom in here all the way into a rock and then zoom into the rock. It's just like, wow. Mojo World. Creating reality as we can see it, just from a math formula carried out. Fractal mathematics. Wow. So all of a sudden, Wolfram's book started to make a lot of sense to me, that maybe the universe is a simple formula in the mind of God to carry out a massive multidimensional dream with, pixels the size of quanta and a frame rate that is infinite to a point where you could never see through it. Instead of a static picture, this would be a moving picture regenerated infinitely fast over and over and over again, moment by moment by moment. This is also Mojo World. You could even generate multi-dimensional realities in Mojo World and zoom in on any of these whole galaxies or universes and zoom into planets. It's like, oh my God. It all begins to make some crazy sense. I mean, Einstein, everything is energy. We know that. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. The reality of creating reality by digging into myself to the right place, the power place in myself. How do you get there, though? That's the problem. And in every culture on Earth, since back to the beginning, sound has been the primary tool for doing that. The sound tradition of every culture to accentuate self-awareness, awakening, deepening meditation, making it faster and more centered using sound waves, has always been there as the primary tool. And so now we're in the 21st century, and we've got better tools. Nobody seems to be kind of using them in a scientific way, but the tools are there. So the idea that we can use entrainment, and we can use sound waves to deliver that, and we can use headphones, and we can use binaural beats to force this other thing, and we can link all of our minds together, we now have tools to flesh this out in a real, practical way, to change our lives and to change the life of the world that we all are generating as a sort of a group's consensus. Cosmos is within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Not new ideas, these are ancient ideas. This is the Sutras of Patanjali made real in the 21st century. You are the universe expressing itself as a human for a little while. You know? Yeah, all of this stuff. New theory shows human consciousness is connected to the universe in an interesting way. Human consciousness is linked to the chaotic nature of the universe according to an astonishing new theory. And that theory is what I'm talking about. The fact that the universe is information. And that information has density. Information has weight. And as essentially, if you interpret the universe as everything in the universe is expanding from everything else, this expansion that is accelerating, that nobody can quite understand, why is this happening? How can it be accelerating? If the universe is information, and the Q mind at the center of all things is attempting to acquire more and more and more information about itself by expanding its mind, expanding consciousness itself, which from the standpoint of the Sutras of Patanjali is that at the core of the quantum field, when you break all the parts, apart and you look deeper and deeper, you finally arrive at a place where there's nothing there except energy pattern relationships in a state of vibration forming standing waves. And the standing waves are nesting together mathematically according to music theory and forming you and me and everything else. The core of that is mathematics, computer code in the mind of God. And as the mind of God expands, expansion of consciousness of the mind of God is expanding the universe, because the universe is God. So as the mind of God expands with more and more information about itself, the universe expands. Very similar to the idea that Einstein came forth with this idea that, the amount of energy that it requires to condense together to form the smallest particle of matter, an atom, is the speed of light times itself. That's how much energy has to coalesce to make the smallest particle of matter. The amount of energy it would take to accelerate the smallest particle to the speed of light times itself. That's a huge amount of energy. And why Einstein said that you can't go faster than the speed of light, that there's a speed limit here, you can't go faster than the speed of light, is because E equals m. So if I am going to start to try to accelerate the smallest particle of matter, an atom, say an atom of gold, we're going to accelerate an atom of gold to the speed of light times itself, an unimaginably huge number. And so we're going to start pushing it. We have to create energy, we have to manufacture energy to push it. This is a mechanical energy wave, this is pure energy pushing the small particle. We're pushing it, and we're pushing it faster and faster and faster. We're accelerating, which means that it's constantly getting faster, constantly accelerating. Constantly more and more and more and more energy is being applied to this particle to keep it moving faster and faster and faster. More and more energy, faster and faster and faster. And once we get to 95% the speed of light, that's where all the weird stuff starts to happen. At 95% the speed of light, the characteristics of the fact that matter and energy are two different forms of the same thing, and there's only one thing in the universe, and it's an illusion that we've got a particle with energy pushing it. They're actually pushing each other. The energy required to push the particle of matter is the same thing as the matter itself, because there's only one thing. There's not two things. That's an illusion. So at 95% of the speed of light, the illusion starts to break up and fall apart, which means that the more energy I'm pushing that particle with, the particle's getting larger and larger and larger as more and more energy is used to push it, because they're both the same thing. So it's such a crazy concept. So the particle's getting larger and larger and larger, and is requiring an exponentially larger amount of energy to keep pushing it, because it's getting bigger the more energy I use to push it with, because of the same thing. And at the speed of light, they both reach an infinite value. It's an infinitely large particle that requires an infinite amount of energy to push it, and we cancel out at infinity. Infinite amount of matter and an infinite amount of energy to push it. That's the real meaning behind this. Why the energy and matter are the same thing, and the amount of energy to push this particle, c squared, cancels out at infinity. And that value, that infinite value of all possible matter at its largest possible state, infinite, and its largest amount of energy to push it, infinite, is the Q-mind. That's the core and center of all things. And in the center of Q-mind is an idea, and the idea is an idea of mathematics, the equal sign between E and M. The cosmic connectome. Our universe is a giant brain, according to scientists. This, sort of intergalactic network of galaxies and is this part, and this part is the connectome in the brain. This is how neurons are connected together throughout the brain network. It's identical. The math that governs two of these is identical. So this concept of the brain and the brain, which is the word that describes the intergalactic web, which is in itself, all of it, a giant fractal hologram where everything is reflected in everything else, and has a mutual influence as a giant sort of symbiote. Here we are again. The universe is like a massive human brain, It's just goes on and on. Scientists find the universe grows like a giant brain. It's growing. The growing of axon connections and the growing of the galactic universal web track together on the same math. So, this idea that the brain networks are oscillating at certain speeds, and the oscillation of those speeds are equated with states of consciousness, beta, alpha, theta, delta, epsilon, gamma, default mode network, all the rest, pushes us into this universal-wide nested series of vibrational waves that spread throughout time and space in multidimensional ways. And from the standpoint of the sutras of Patanjali, these waves are waves of ideas. It's an idea in the mind of God that forms everything we are, all of it, swirling in the cosmos from the center of what I'm calling the Q mind. If you remember in the alphabetology, when I was talking about that, the ultimate female letter of the alphabet is 0, completely enclosed, all curves, all round, soft, protected. The male letter is I, and it goes infinitely, and both of these are infinite. This has no beginning and has no end. Like we said, 0, nothing. All right? No beginning, no end, infinite. Well, this one here is also infinite. It's an infinite line that has no beginning and no end. It goes forever. Well, we can't draw a letter that goes forever, so we indicate the fact that we're taking just a little piece of it, a piece of the infinite line, and this is the symbol for it, the symbol for the infinite line. We place a bracket at both ends. But when we go back to the 0 and we start making other letters, this letter, the letter Q, is the ultimate female infinity with a road that comes out, a way to come in and a way to come out. We all of a sudden have a road, a way of getting in and out of this infinite space. That's what Q stands for, the road. And so people with, Q prominently in their name would have the characteristics of that. Someone who finds a path, someone who finds a way, someone who can always find a way. We've all known those kind of people, the kind of people who can always make it happen somehow. It's like the person who can always procure what you're looking for. The person who's always looking for their path. And at the core of the quantum field, if it's Q mind, quantum mind, there's a reason why people chose that word, quantum, with the Q at the beginning. Because that is us looking for the path, looking for the road. The quantum field is us looking for the path of what this is all about and what it means. None of these things are any accident. The fact that you have a certain name with certain letters in it, is a yin-yang. You form it and it forms you. Your personality conforms to the name that you have, and the name that you have issues forth from who you are. They sort of cause each other. Personal quantum mind and the biggest universal quantum mind concept linked together through vibrational frequencies as coupled oscillator network, fractal holograms, all reflecting each other. Whatever happens in here affects the whole, and vice versa. The cosmic mind of all minds, where we all are attempting to go. Where we're attempting to go here, now, today. And that's what the soundtrack is all about today, is the Q-mind state, the realization that if the universe is infinite information, that's what this is. It's an information matrix. And as the mind of God expands, expansion of consciousness, the universe expands with it, because it's all just one thing. And we can push the envelope with that ourselves. So here we go. Headphones, please. And here we go. So that's where you can get the soundtrack. The scientificsounds.com/q-mind. Thank you all. The universe is hopping for me. Right now, I think there's the tail end of the Shift Network and their Global Sound Healing Summit. My part of that was on Thursday. I think there's a way to get continuing access to all of the talks. I think you sign up specially for that. I just got back last week from Colorado. The Gaia Network flew me out there to shoot a 10-part series on sound. I can hardly wait to see what they're going to do with that. We talk for hours. So I think I'll probably be in most of those episodes, if not all of them. They're just beginning that, so it probably won't be till later in the year that comes out, but watch for it. That'll be a significant, mind-blowing series. But I've done major interviews in the last 3 weeks, 7 major interviews. It's happening. It's expanding. The consciousness of the network is expanding. People are stepping forward. It's everywhere. It's happening. It's good. So we're doing our part. So until next Sunday, and next week, on Tuesday, I'm flying out again up to San Francisco for another week. So now it's more. Heal Documentary just got bought by Amazon Prime from Netflix, and now there's another 200 million people seeing that. So this is all good. It's the Q-mind is expanding, right? Anyway, till next Sunday, peace and happiness and joy and healthy. Please take care of yourself.